let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, go ahead and open up the spreadsheet that we started together last week, all right, the after-tax cash flow model. And what we are going to do, the agenda is very simple, very straightforward today. I mean, I know a lot of you are panicking, like, oh my God, what are we doing? It's not that complicated, okay? So, what I sent you yesterday via email is what you have in front of you on your desk, okay, which was a PDF of the completed spreadsheet, which I took the time to complete yesterday. And what we're going to do together today is basically to finish the spreadsheet that we started, so it will be identical to this one. Does that make sense? The whole idea, let me make sure this is clear to you, what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing. Up to this point in this course, we have done a whole bunch of different calculations, okay? Pretty much most all of those calculations are contained in this one singular spreadsheet, okay? In terms of internal rates of return, in terms of depreciation, in terms of all that other sort of stuff. This tends to kind of pull everything together in one sort of singular place. Now, you can sort of say, well, why don't you start off with this? Well, there's a reason. There's a method to the madness. You need to understand where the numbers are coming from, what the numbers mean, and how they fit into this, okay? Because if you're just basically taking an existing spreadsheet and just typing in the numbers that are different, you're not going to be picking up on what the issues are, what the nuances are, what the meaning of those numbers really is. So the goal today is for us to complete this working spreadsheet model together so that you are forced to actually put in the formulas into the spreadsheet yourself, okay? Whether you completely understand every little component of it or not, that's not the concern. At least you're being forced to type it in and at least have it in front of you in some meaningful way. Once you have the completed spreadsheet that we are going to, as I said, finish up today, then what I will be doing is I will be passing out case study number 1 and case study number 2, and all you really are going to have to do on those case studies is populate the cells in yellow and write down the check figures, okay? Once you get the check figures completely correct on both case studies, you're free to go. We're done, okay? So if you just take the time and you follow along with me step by step in terms of creating the spreadsheet, we could probably be done here in about an hour or so, okay? But if you don't, or you haven't been following with me in terms of creating the spreadsheet, we're going to be here the full 4 hours, or at least I will, working with you. Because you're not leaving this room today until you have a fully functioning spreadsheet. Now, what that also means is you will be leaving the room with full credit on the case studies if you have a fully functioning spreadsheet. But if you give up and you walk out and say, I'm tired of this, I'm frustrated, you're not going to get credit for it. It's as simple as that. Okay, does that make sense?
Do we have to send it to you by email?
No.
Show it to you.
No. All I need are your check figures. Because I'll know whether it's right or whether it's not based upon the answers you get. Okay, because it's only going to work if you have the right answers and you have the right formulas. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so the goal of what we're going to do is we're going to kind of work, for the most part, from the top down on this handout and finish up the model that we created. So the model that I've got up on the screen is not the completed model. The model that I have up on the screen is the model that we ended with whenever we finished class last session. So if you were up to speed with what we did at the end of last class, you're completely up to speed with what I've got up here on the screen. Does that make sense? Yes. All right. Now, let me be clear. The handout. Look very carefully at the handout. You will notice there are cells that are in gray, okay? You see the cells that are in gray on the handout. They're yellow on your screen, or should be if you follow the nomenclature that I started. But all of the cells that are in gray on the handout are what? The input cells. Those are the only cells you should ever have to change once we complete the spreadsheet, okay? Because those are the items that are going to change from project to project. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, so what we're going to do is obviously, as I said, we're going to kind of work down the rest of this page and, you know, clean up a few little things. I tried to clean up most of the formatting and that sort of thing to where it's relatively nice and tidy. You don't have to really do that part if you don't want to. I'm not really concerned about that. What I'm really concerned about is you've got all the formulas in there and you're populating, you're getting the right answers. Now here's the thing. You're going to know whether you have a fully functioning spreadsheet or not because you're going to be able to type in all of these numbers and instantly see, do I match up with everything? If you don't have a fully functioning spreadsheet. It's as simple as that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Professor, you know, since last week I haven't get anything from an email from you. I mean, at this point it doesn't matter because we're going to
Once again, check your junk mail.
And it's not there.
Well, the only thing I sent you was this.
Yes,
Okay.
Because even last week when you sent these two, I
Okay.
didn't get it.
All right,
That's
so
fine.
let's just get started with this. All right, so working from the top down, okay? Let's just sort of look here at the screen, making sure we're matching up. I think, you know, most all of this is still, that's all the same. All the inputs which were given to me by you as we created this model together. So everything there is the same. Now, one thing I noticed is that over here for the annual rent growth rate, I did not go ahead and highlight that in yellow. Same thing for the annual OPEX expense growth rate. You may or may not have done that on your own, but go ahead and do that because those are input cells, okay? Everybody with me? All right, so it looks like we are completely in sync up to, it looks like value of the property. All right? Everybody see that? Okay, is your model in sync with mine up to that point? Yes? Okay, now if you will look at the handout, you will notice
where your E is, mine is just F. Is that a big deal? Can I keep going on?
it can be a big deal because that if we reference that formula,
Okay.
reference that cell, but you'll know that at some point.
I can't just change it throughout the whole thing as we go?
You can, but you may find that there could be some little issue there. Okay, so you will notice that I added a new line, okay? Line 17 on the handout, okay? So what you will need to do is go ahead and type in equity invested, because we're going to need that here in a little bit. Okay, and you will notice it is not an input cell. Okay. Okay, any question? Okay, you will notice that it is not an input cell, therefore it is a calculation cell. So that means we've got to figure out, using whatever information that we've got on the spreadsheet, what was the equity that we invested in the project, okay? Now, looking at the information that we've got here, that's an easy calculation. Because all we're doing is we're saying the equity invested is what? That's the money we put into it, in addition to the debt, gives us the total value of the property. So, if we get the total value of the property, and we've got the loan amount on the property, then taking that value of the property, subtracting out the loan amount, we're going to get the equity invested. Yes? Okay? So, all you should have to do is just get equal, and then cell reference B16 minus B14. Boom. 78, 66, 463. So we should match up there now on both up here and with what you have on the actual handout.
What was the cell again?
Okay.
16 and
Okay, once again, 16 minus 14 is going to give you 17. Okay. All right. Now, let's sort of work down the page here just to sort of see if we have anything else we need to clean up potentially. So looking at year 1 through year 6, everything looks okay so far. all the numbers are matching, all the way down. Let's just double check before tax cash flow, 532, yep, all the way across. Now you'll notice that I did something to year 6. Okay, take a look over here at year 6. What did I do in the handout?
You didn't take the net operating income.
Okay, why did I do that?
Because you don't get the money.
Because you don't get the money for that year, and you're only using that year's projected income to determine the value of the property at the end of the 5th year using the net operating income, projected net operating income for year 6. So in essence, everything below net operating income for year 6, we can just delete. Okay? So that matches up with what we have here on the handout. Okay, so that you have nothing else for year 6 all the way down after NOI. Okay? All right? Now, where we left off was specifically in calculating the interest expense line for the property, okay? Now, so in cell B31, okay, this, in the scheme of things, is probably the most difficult of the sort of the calculations to do. It's not that complicated, but it requires you to pay attention and to understand what we're doing. So this line item, the interest expense, is not the mortgage payment. This is strictly the interest portion of the mortgage. Okay, so we have to strip out just that piece. Now, the mortgage payment itself stays the same all throughout the 5 years. Yes? The mortgage payment stays the same. But the interest expense is going to change basically from month to month and year to year, because as you pay down the loan, you ultimately are paying less and less interest, more and more principal. Does that make sense? Okay? So we're going to use a function that Excel has, the cumulative interest function, to figure out what is the interest expense for each year. Okay? Now it's relatively straightforward, but it requires a teensy bit of logic. Okay? Now, year 1 would be what months? In other words, month 1 through what?
12.
Okay. Year 1 is going to be months 1 through 12. Yes? Everybody understand that?
Yes.
Year 2 is going to be months what? 13 to 24. Year 3, 25 to 36. Year 4, 37 to 48. And year 5, 49 to 60. Okay, does everybody understand that? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So, watch what I'm doing on the board, or with respect to the formula. Okay, equal. C-U-M-I-P-M-T. Cumulative interest payment. Okay? Everybody see it? Now, what it does, as you see right here, returns the cumulative interest paid between 2 periods of time. Okay? So the 2 periods of time that we're going to be looking at are going to be like, for year 1 is going to be period 1 through period 12. For year 2 is going to be period 13 to 24, and so forth, so on. Okay? So, now whenever you open up the parentheses, it automatically is telling you what you need to type in. You start off with the interest rate, followed by the number of periods, followed by the present value of the loan, and then start period. Your start period would be 1. Your end period would be 12. And then the type is going to be 0 because that is end of the period or end of the month. Okay, sort of like on your calculator how you have the beginning of the month versus end of the month function, same functionality here in Excel. Okay, so now for the interest rate, all we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to capture the interest rate of the 4.5%, and then we're going to divide it by 12, comma, okay, so you see what I've got so far, equal cumulative interest payment, open parentheses, B12 divided by 12, comma, and now we're going to put in the number of periods for the loan, number of periods, which is going to be B13 times 12, okay, comma. Then the next one is going to be the present value or the loan amount, which is going to be cell B14. Okay, comma. And then the start period is just simply going to be 1, comma, 12, comma, and then you'll notice the very last one is whether it is end of the period or beginning of the period. And once again, as we talked about very early on, virtually everything is calculated at the end of the period. So that's going to be a value of 0. Okay? And then you're simply going to close the parentheses and then hit return. All right? Now,
I'm getting a name error.
well, it's possible you typed in something incorrectly. All right?
Less than 0, right, Fred?
I'm sorry?
The last number is 0, right?
Correct.
0, right?
All right. So I've got the, if we look at the number that I've got up here, does that match? Yes, it does. Okay? 1051,277.27. Now I'm going to click on it just so that you can probably see the actual written statement here. Once again, a little bit larger. Okay? Let me read it out. Equal CUMIPMT, open parentheses, B12 divided by 12, comma, B13 times 12, comma, B14, comma, 1, comma, 12, comma, 0, close parentheses. Okay? Now once you've done that, once again, you should match up. Okay? Now, okay, how is that formula going to be different as we basically copy over? The only thing that's going to change is what?
Start and end.
The start and the end. So everything else we want to keep in a fixed static location. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so here is what I would suggest you do. You go in, put a $ in front of the B, a $ in front of the 12 to make that a static cell reference. Do the same thing for the B13 and do the same thing for the B14. Okay? But leave everything else alone for the moment. Okay? Okay, so once again, I'll read it out just to make sure. Equal CUMIPMT, open parentheses, $B, $12 divided by 12, comma, $B, $13 times 12, comma, $B, $14, comma, 1, comma, 12, comma, 0, close parentheses. Okay, now, once you've done that, take grab the bottom right-hand corner of that cell and copy it over. Okay, now it's going to populate the same number for each of those years. Okay, so now, unfortunately, in this particular case, there's not an easy shortcut to change each of those. So you're going to have to change each one of them by hand, like this. Okay, let's start with year 2. Okay, if you double click on year 2, the only thing we're going to be changing is the 1 and 12 to 13 and 24. Okay, if you've done it correctly, then you should match up with what I've got up here on the screen, and you should match up with what is on your handout. Okay, and do the same thing for year 3. Okay, which is now going to be 25, 36. Okay, same thing for year 4, which is going to be 37 and 48. And then finally for year 5, 49 and 60. Okay, now, just to make sure we've done everything correct, let's just double check the handout for the interest expense line and make sure that each one is matching up with what we've got on the screen and on your computer. It looks like everything matches up, so we're good. Okay? All right, pretty straightforward. All right, now, taxable income. That one you should be able to do by yourself because it's just simply, basically an addition problem. So all you're going to be doing is plus B29 plus basically B30 plus B31. And once again, the reason we're doing plus is because all of those are already negatives. So that should then subtract out to 860, 553, 27.
So you add up from the 29 to the 31.
Okay, once again, yes. All you're doing is you're taking the 46, 300, and because these are already negative numbers, you are simply able to do plus, 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 and then equal. Okay? Does that make sense?
So it's B29, 30, and then 31?
Correct. And once again, it should be pretty obvious what we're doing because all you have to do is look over here, this minus this equals that.
I was getting that.
Okay? All right. Now, if you're matching up there, this one is a simple copy over because this one is fully dynamic. Okay? So all you have to do is grab that bottom right-hand corner and then pull over for the full 5 years of release, and you should match up, and we did.
Did you put an equal after the 31?
Oh, what?
You don't need to, no.
Okay.
Okay? All right? Moving forward.
Hold on.
After what?
Oh.
So for me, can you show me one more time how to make
860,
the
yeah.
interest expense formula?
Yes.
For some reason, my Excel is not doing the formula well.
He's getting the same thing I was getting. I don't see. Just the name.
What version of Excel do you have? How old is it?
Office 365.
It should work. I mean, in other words, whenever you type in equal, the CUMIPMT, open parentheses, does it actually populate this information here or not?
Yeah.
Okay, then it should work.
Can you click on B32 cell for a minute?
B.
I don't know what it is. B32, yeah. B31. Oh,
Yeah, maybe
okay. You go 860, right?
Now then,
Is yours one off? It should be B12.
all right. Next one you should also be able to do very easily by yourself.
Why is yours B13?
Your taxes payable is simply going to be, once again, look over here on the left, it's guiding you. Shh, it's guiding you. All you have to do is multiply your taxable income times your tax rate to get your taxes payable. So, once again, equal, go up, get B32, multiply that by B33. Okay? Okay? All right? Now, let's see if we match up. 240, 954, 91. Yep. Okay. Now, that one is also a very easy one. All we got to do, copy it over. So grab the bottom right-hand corner. Okay. And we're all matched up there. Okay. Now, one other little thing, if you haven't already, the only piece in the tax rate that is yellow is the only one that you should have to change, which is the 28%. Okay, now we did this last time, but that one is the one, make sure that you've got that highlighted in yellow so that you know that is an input cell. So now, in other words, if you go to that cell, and we were to change it to, let's say, 34%, then what should happen with your spreadsheet is it changes it all the way across. Okay? So make sure that you've got that set up correctly. All right, so once again, 28% all the way across. Okay, moving on. Okay, now, all right, your before tax cash flow, all right, this one is already calculated above. So this is just simply a cell reference to the before tax cash flow up in B27. So this one we don't have to do anything with it other than copy it over. Okay. Once again, just copying that over, make sure that you're matching with, once again, what is on the handout. Okay. All right, now then, the taxes payable. This is simply pulling down the value from above, from cell B34, the taxes payable. All right, so you can do that just by simply hitting equal, and then B34. I'm sorry?
Should we put it negative?
I was about to get there, Noah. Okay. All right. Now, whenever you do that cell reference, what you will notice is it is a positive number. We want it to be a negative number so that we can do our calculation, because you'll notice that on the handout that I've got it set up as a negative number. So to set it up as a negative number, all you should have to do is whenever you cell reference the B34 is before the B34, you simply put in the minus sign, the negative sign. Okay? Now, once you've done that, if you want to, go ahead and copy that over. Okay? All right? Make sure, once again, all your numbers are matching. They should. No reason they shouldn't. All the way across. And then now, the after-tax cash flow, all right? Which is simply going to be, as you see here, before tax cash flow minus taxes payable gives us after-tax cash flow. So here, just simply going to be taking the 472, adding it to our negative 240 to give us 231, 268, 16.
What was it?
Be what?
Okay, once again, this plus this gives us this, okay? Because it's a negative number.
Question. Rather than doing the sum, because a lot of times I'll just sum it, is there a way that you can make it so that if you add a cell in between, it still calculates everything through?
If you use the sum function, that will
Some
do that.
function will do that.
Yeah.
But we're not going to mess with anything, so
Okay. All right. So that gets us through basically the first page of this. All right. So now, what you should do is double check to make sure your spreadsheet is matching the handout completely on this first page. If it is not, you've got a problem. Okay? If it is, you're good to go. And you'll probably be out of here in about another 30 minutes. Okay? All right? Now, let's start with the next piece, okay? Which is basically the flip side of the handout. Okay? Now, let's start by just simply putting in all of the words, okay? Before we start doing any of the formulas, let's just go ahead and start putting in all the words that are in the spreadsheet, okay? All right, so that, once again, all you have to do is just follow what I've got, all right? So in cell A40, we're simply typing in return on asset ROA equals NOI divided by
Everything was perfect with that number.
value, okay? All right? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just type these in. Once again, I think you can handle that on your own without any oversight.
Do you have any extra copies of the handout, Dr. Wood?
It's right there.
Thank you, sir.
And if I skip a line, you should be skipping a line too, okay? So everything will fit, okay? So just make sure that you're matching up in terms of where I am up here.
Is there supposed to be something with the tax on capital gain?
Yep. So I've got everything typed in. I'll give you guys a few more minutes to get that typed in.
Can you scroll down a little bit?
Your last sale was 70, right?
Yes. All right, so for the boxes, it's pretty simple. You simply highlight the area that you want to put a box around. You go up here, you should have a little icon that has a whole bunch of different options here. And the one that I chose was thick outside borders. And then you just click on that, and then boom, you've got a box.
Huh? Yeah, I did the 24.
Okay.
Can you scroll up so I see what you have in yellow?
Okay. So the one thing that I realized that I did not put on the handout
58.
is for B58, C58, and D58, those three should be highlighted as input cells.
Oh,
Yeah.
58.
So that's the only deviation that unfortunately, I didn't catch that before I had printed it out and sent it to you. Okay. Everybody got everything typed in now? Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes. Those of you that are working a little faster, go ahead and attempt the other pieces. It's not that complicated, okay? You should be able to do this. I mean, I'm walking you through it, but you really should be able to do this on your own, okay? So see if you can start filling in the numbers and see if you can, you've got the numbers there to check to see if you match.
52 is an input cell, correct? The cap rate?
Yes, and the cap rate, cap rate, that is also, thanks for catching that. That is an input cell, so 6.5%.
There's value in the value of the property.
Correct. Okay. So, if you're not completely done with the typing in, that's okay. Let's go ahead and kind of at least get back up here and let's try to help those folks who are maybe a little bit ahead of schedule or on schedule. All right. So, starting with cell B40, the return on asset. NOI divided by value. What also is that called?
Cap rate.
Cap rate. So the return on asset is nothing more than just simply saying, what is the return this property is throwing off each year by using your NOI relative to the value of the property, so that you see whether it's going up, whether it's going down, staying the same. And so in this particular case, all you're going to do, you're going to hit equal, you're going to go up and you're going to find the NOI for that year, which looks like we can use cell B29, divided by, and then we're going to go up and we're going to find the overall value of the property, which is cell B16. All right, now, what it returns is obviously the full decimal value. All right, what you can do once you've got that is go up and hit obviously the percent up here and convert that into a decimal. Now, what it does initially is it rounds it off to the nearest whole number. So in order to go ahead and kick out those decimals, which are valuable to us, we go over here slightly to the right and we expand the decimals to maybe a couple of decimal places so we get 6.50. Okay, everybody cool with that? All right, now, okay, let me highlight that cell for a second. Now think about this for a moment. We wanted just to be able to copy this over, but one of those numbers is a dynamic cell reference, one is a fixed, one is fixed, one is dynamic, okay? All right, so you've got to figure out which one is staying put, which one is moving. Okay, so that means our net operating income is going to, basically the B29 is going to stay just like it is, but we're going to put a dollar sign in front of the B and the 16. Okay? Now, once we do that, then we should, once again, be able to copy over. Okay, let's see if you match. Okay, looks good to me. 7.3 for year 5. All right. Okay, everybody good with that? Okay, so now once again, what is that telling us about this property? Its performance is actually improving over time. Okay. All right, now, the next one is the before tax return on equity, also called the cash on cash return. Okay, now, this one, it pretty much tells you what it is right here. You're going to do what? Take the before tax cash flow and divide it by the equity. Okay, so same little sort of routine, equal, let's go up and find the before tax cash flow. There it is right there in cell B36, divided by the equity, okay, which is just the money that we have put into the property, because that's the return that we want to look on our equity. So that's the cell that we had created earlier today. That's the reason we created it in cell B17. So those of you that were late, you don't have that cell, okay? All right? All right, so now you should get around 6%. Let's go ahead and make it look pretty. Pick out those decimals. Should be pretty much just an even 6%. Okay? Now, once again, just like above, we want to make the B17, in this case, the static cell reference. So now, just copy over, and boom, okay, that all matches. Okay, so now we've got our before tax return on equity. So, looking good, obviously getting better as we move across the page. Now, one thing to point out here, and this will literally tell me who are the A students and who aren't. How can you start this property in year one with a before tax return on equity of 6%, and it has a return on asset of 6.5%, which is higher, but yet at the end of all of this, 5 years later, what's actually higher? The before tax return on equity and the return on asset is lower than that. 2 words. The A student will know the answer. If there are no A students, then well, we're done here. No.
Well, the N1 has increased.
Yeah, but why is this occurring? What is the concept called? What is the difference between those 2 numbers? One is an all equity deal, the other uses debt. What would that be called?
It has
On
2
leverage?
E's. and a-
Financial leverage. In other words, what you're seeing there is the impact of the financial leverage, okay? But in other words, the return on asset is unleveraged, okay? Whereas the before tax return on equity is leveraged, meaning you're using debt. And so as basically your returns overall increase, that return on equity is going to be magnified. That's the reason, that's pretty much the whole reason why you take on debt to buy real estate, is because you can magnify your rate of return significantly through the use of debt. Okay? All right, moving on. The after-tax return on equity. Should be able to do this one very simply. Take your after-tax cash flow, cell B38, divided by your equity, cell B17. Okay? Clean it up. Okay. Row 2.94, are we matching up with that one? Yep. Not so great of a return. But it's on an after-tax basis. Okay, copy that over. Well, we can't copy it over yet because we've got to change the cell reference for B17 to be static. Once we've done that, copy it over. Okay, now see if you match with that. The only time, that's an excellent question. Is there any time where the after-tax return on equity could be higher than the before-tax return on equity? In the event of tax credits that you might receive for either low-income housing tax credits, historic, basically tax credits, also could be a situation of where you're carrying forward a loss on a property for many years in the future, that you, in essence, are getting a rebate on your taxes. And so the tax piece of it will be altered in such a way that, yeah, you could theoretically have a higher overall after-tax return, okay? Okay, we good? Okay. Moving forward. Okay. Now, okay, I've got a couple of things I didn't type in. Just the all equity deal cash flows. That column, and then the before tax cash flows. And the after tax cash flows. Right, justify those and underline them, be consistent with what I've got here. Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
I kept getting notifications that someone was modifying a spreadsheet. Were you playing with it? It gave you the dates and everything, that someone was modifying my spreadsheet.
I'm not modifying it.
No, I was thinking maybe when you finish the spreadsheet. Did anybody else get those? Oh, man.
Nobody played with your
Are
money.
you on Office 360?
Is it happening right now?
No, it happened yesterday. It happened the 15th.
You could, okay, yeah, if you're using Office 365 where that is, it's a situation of where if you're tied in with
If
the
you
same
crack it.
spreadsheet, like a more than one computer, then you alter it on one computer and it alters on all of them.
Okay, I'll just download it on Excel and just save it on.
Okay,
Yeah, I usually do it.
Now.
What the hell?
this next little piece, what we are doing is simply what we have done all semester. Calculating basically the cash flows, okay? So we're just gonna be ripping, for the most part, those numbers from above and putting them in here, okay? There's no over magical mystification of this, all right? But here's what I want you to take a look at though. Okay, for the all equity deal, our initial cash outflow is the 31 million, which is what? The whole value, because if it's an all cash, all equity deal, you're basically writing a check for 31 million, yes? So all we're gonna be doing, excuse me, all we're gonna be doing is, we're gonna make that a negative number, so equal negative, and then we're gonna go up and we're gonna capture cell B16. Okay, so once again, just simply equal negative B16.
Fred, what is the concept behind it again? What are we trying to do?
Okay, what we have done all semester, which is to calculate the internal rate of return and net present value using the cash flows. Okay? And in this case, we're looking at it in three different ways. We're looking at it, the first way is if it was an all equity deal, all cash deal, and what our return would be. We're looking at it as if we have borrowed some of the money and what our before tax return is, and we're looking at it as an after tax return. So a normal investor is going to look at all three of those to sort of say, okay, how does this play out in our own personal investment strategy? Because chances are you're going to have different hurdle rates for each of those. Normally, you're going to have a higher hurdle rate for an all cash deal than you're going to have on the before tax or the after tax. Okay? All right. So, just to go ahead and kind of just go across here, your before tax cash flow, your cash out of pocket is the $7,866,000 for both before tax and the after tax. All right, which is simply what? The equity. Okay, so you're going to go up, equal negative, and get that cell reference. for B17. Boom. Okay, same thing for the after tax. Here we should be able just to type it in, equal negative B17. Okay. Well, it's formatting for whatever it happened to be in that particular cell. And you can change it, which I tend to do. Just wait. Change that. There we go. All right.
You prefer accounting, right?
I don't really care. I mean, it's kind of whatever you're comfortable with. All right? Some people get really hung up on that sort of thing, the formatting of the numbers, and you know, at the end of the day, just as long as you can figure it out. Okay. Now, this next piece is idiot-proof for the most part. Okay? All you're going to have to do is literally go up and pull down the values from above, populate them in the cell. Now, take a look, and let's think about this just for a second. You look at the cash flows for the all-equity deal, the $2,046,300. What value are we pulling down? The NOI, okay? Because with an all-equity deal, that's pretty much where you're stopping, okay? Because below NOI is where you get into debt and you get into the tax stuff, okay? So we're using NOI there. So all you should be doing is going up and cell referencing the NOI for year one. All right? Now, in this particular case, we could probably figure out a nice, nifty little shortcut, but to keep it simple, all we've got here, just to make sure you're clear, in cell B46, we simply have a cell reference to B29. Everybody cool with that? Now, going across, since here we're going down, up there we're going across, so the next one, instead of B29, is going to be what? C29, D29, E29, okay? So just simply do that. Equal C29, equal D29, equal E29, equal F29 to start with. Okay? Now the value there in B50 is not going to match up initially because we have to add it to something. We have to add the reversion value. But go ahead and get to the point of where you're matching up with me on those numbers. Okay? Now, for the before tax and the after tax cash flows, same thing. Just go up, grab those numbers, pull them down. So for the before tax cash flow, B36. So that means C36, D36, E36, and F36. Okay? And then same thing for the after tax cash flows. B38, C38, D38, E38, and F38. Okay? Does everyone match up with what I've got? Okay. Get those typed in. And once again, we're going to have to fix line 50 here in just a second. Give you a chance to catch up. I don't think, you can do like a weird activity thing, but I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, I tried it. It came out crazy.
Okay. Now, okay, for line 50, Okay, so first of all, we need to get a reversion price to put in there, all right? So let's skip down here initially to B53. Okay, now, as Noah pointed out earlier, in order to get the reversion value, what we do is we take the NOI from year 6 and we divide that by the cap rate. This is IRV, good old friend IRV, never forget IRV, okay? So we simply are going to go up, you're going to do equal, and then you're going to go to year 6, to the NOI for year 6, which is G25, divided by the cap rate, and you should get the 36,363,903.50. Okay, so that is simply telling us, based upon that projected NOI for year 6, that should be the value or the selling price of the property at the end of year 5. Okay, everybody good? All right. So now, what we're going to do is you're going to take that number, okay, and you're going to add it to the cell B50. So in other words, you're going to take what's currently in cell B50, which is F29, and then you're going to add it to the reversion value. Boom. 38,660, 373.08. Okay, everybody good with that? Yes or no? Okay, now, what you should be saying is, wait a second, look at the before tax cash flow reversion and the after tax cash flow reversion. Those numbers are different. Okay, now, once again, this will tell me who the A student is in the class. Why, or what would be the difference between the reversion value for the all equity deal and the reversion value for the before tax deal? One word, 4 letters. Debt. Okay? Because you've got to subtract out the loan or subtract out the balance on the loan at the end of the 5 years. Okay? Because you don't get to keep that money, you've got to pay it back. Okay? All right. We're not going to do that calculation right now. We're going to come back to it. All right? To get that reversion. Now, the after-tax reversion, you notice it's even a little bit less. Why is it less? You're paying taxes on part of that reversion. So you can just see, just very simply, okay, once again, on the handout, look at that reversion difference between the before tax of the 15.6 million versus the after tax of 13.9 million. So that difference of 1 point whatever, 2 million, something like that, is just simply the income tax you got to pay. Pure and simple. All right. All right.
Can you put those your input for C50, please, for pizza?
C50. Yep.
C.
He hasn't added
He
anything yet.
hasn't done
He
it
hasn't
yet.
added it. It's just the value that the first version is all.
I'm sorry. What are you looking for?
It's just F36. F36.
Okay. All right. Now, So let's go down. All right, so let's attempt to do just a regular internal rate of return for the all equity deal. We've got all the numbers here, yes? And this is no different than on your calculator, okay? In other words, this would be your cash flow 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Solve for internal rate of return. Boom, goes right there.
What is gas?
Okay,
Yes.
let me get to that. So, all right.
IRR formula.
So you're going to type in equal IRR, open parentheses, and it says values, comma, guess. In many instances, you don't actually have to put a value in for the guess function, okay? But let me explain to you real briefly what it is and how it sort of originated. Whenever Excel calculates internal rate of return, much like your calculator calculates internal rate of return, mathematically, what it is doing, quite frankly, is internally, it is playing a high-low game. And what I mean by that is it starts out with a seed value of, let's say, 10%. And it says, is the internal rate of return 10%? No. Okay. And is it higher than 10%? Yes or no? It is. It's higher. Okay. Let's put a seed value, or put the next value in at 11%. Okay. Is the internal rate of return 11%? No. Is it less than 11%? Yes. Then it basically goes through this iterative process to actually calculate. And so what with this guess feature, if you've got some really kind of weird internal rate of return kind of calculations, which we don't have, you may need to seed that value in order for it to properly get to the actual calculation. It's become less important with the newer versions of Excel than some of the really ancient versions of 20 or 30 years ago, okay? But they still kind of have it in there, you know, for some of the old school people that really, you know, play around with some of these little nuanced issues. But for our purposes, you can pretty much ignore it, okay? Now, this is the part you're going to love. For those of you who have never used this function in Excel, because it is insanely easy, okay? Which is all you're doing is you're going to now highlight all of the inputs from beginning to end. Close the parentheses. Hit enter. Done. Okay? Now, you're going to probably want to kick the decimal places out. Okay? Kick the decimal places out a couple of places so we get 9.44. Okay? All right? Everybody cool with that? Yes or no? Okay. Now, what we can do, even though it's not going to give us the correct answers, we can actually go ahead and just copy that over. And you're going to see they're not the right answers because we haven't populated the reversion. Okay? So ignore the fact that they're not the right answers, but if you're matching my numbers up here, at least you're doing everything right up to this point. Okay. Okay, moving. Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to induce my heart attack sooner rather than later.
Please don't.
Did
Okay.
Luis tell you you met one of your former students from Texas?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
asked about if you're still
Yeah,
drinking. I read home.
It's a dirty, nasty habit. Okay. All right. Moving on. All right. You know, it's kind of funny, just a quick side note, whenever I started teaching in 1989, I didn't need any, you know, stimulant like that to keep my brain working. And it probably wasn't until, I don't know, the mid-90s that I was teaching at UT Austin, and all of a sudden I was just kind of like, these kids are way too smart. And I was like, I've got to get some stimulant to make sure I am on point. And so I started drinking Red Bull. And so pretty much from that point forward, you know, that's pretty much the only time I drink Red Bull is when I'm teaching, because of the one thing that keeps my brain hopefully reasonably active. Okay, moving forward.
This guy Bradley told me you used to drink 2 cans per class. I
You
don't
know,
know if that's-
well, actually, whenever we did the all-day classes, because we used to, you know, we obviously do the all-day class. The next semester, I'm going to be teaching probably all day. I may go through 4 or 5 cans. So, yeah. So as I said, you know, the heart is.
So what are you like with that?
Okay, moving forward. All right, so the net present value at our hurdle rate. Okay, so now if you remember from our calculations that we, you know, have done by hand using the calculator, we would come up with what is an appropriate hurdle rate for a project based upon whatever conditions that we've set. Now what I have done here is just sort of arbitrarily said for an all equity deal, we should get at least a 20% rate of return. For our before tax return should be around 15%, and for our after tax return, 10%. The only reason I came up with those numbers is just, I mean, they're in one sense are meaningless, except that it just simply is stating our priorities with respect to what is it that we want to achieve if we're going to be doing a deal, okay? Well, we're not doing, in this particular instance, an all equity deal. We are doing a debt deal, so this hurdle rate, quite frankly, is irrelevant. If we were doing an all equity deal, then it would be relevant. But we're actually doing the rate of return. Now, obviously we haven't got there yet in terms of calculation, but what you will notice is that our before tax internal rate of return for this deal is actually 20.43%. Well, that exceeds our 15% hurdle rate, meaning we have met our minimum return and we have made a profit. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Okay? And the same sort of thing would be true on the after-tax basis. There we got an after-tax internal rate of return of 16.3. Our hurdle rate for that was 10%, so we met that. Okay, now, to get those numbers, okay, we're going to use the net present value function. Okay, this one has a little weird nuance, okay, that's different than the internal rate of return calculation and different than how you do it on your calculator. And I'll explain it as we sort of go through. We're going to do equal NPV, open parentheses, okay? Now the first thing they ask for is the rate, okay? That's going to be the hurdle rate, okay? So in this case, B58, comma. Now, this is the part where it's a difference, okay? Here, with the NPV, what you're going to do is you're going to go up and you're not going to start with the initial cash flow. And you're going to say, why? Well, because that number doesn't get discounted, okay? What gets discounted are the future cash flows, okay? So all we're going to do is you're going to hit the colon and then drag down, and you're only going to capture basically the cash flows for end of year 1 through the cash flow for year 5 with the reversion. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right. Then you're going to close the parentheses. But hold on, let me go ahead and do this real quick. Now, if you hit enter, you're going to get 21 million. Okay, now just relax for a second. What is that number? Okay, let's just think about this just for a second. Okay, once again, use your brain. That's not the, if you notice, that is not the answer that's on the sheet. There's a reason for that. This answer is basically saying if we required a 20% return on this deal, we know we're not getting a 20% return because our IRR is 9.44. But if we required a 20% return on this deal, this is the most we could pay for the project at time 0. Well, we're paying $31 million, which is basically $10 million more than what we should be paying for it. So as a result, we're probably, excuse me, we're probably going to get a value that is negative for the net present value, okay? But how are we going to get that number? You're just simply going to take this number and subtract out the 31 million, or in essence add it because it's already a negative number up here, okay? So what we can do is we go back to this particular cell, and at the end, negative 31, oops, I'm sorry, pop in plus. Brain dead. Okay, here we go. Plus, there we go. 10 million, negative 10 million, 430, 753, 39. Once again, there's the
Plus 45?
Yeah, that's
plus
45.
B45. So all that's doing is just simply indirectly subtracting out the initial purchase price. Okay? Now, okay, even though the numbers won't be correct, we can go ahead and copy over. We shouldn't have to, I don't think we have to do anything there. I mean, they're not going to be correct yet because we don't have the right reversion values put in yet. But you can go ahead and copy them over. Okay? All right. The rest of this, quite frankly, is just adding and subtracting a bunch of stuff. All right? So, and yanking it from somewhere else. Okay, so this bottom box, if you will, is basically the calculations that we have to do to take into account the income tax liability that we're going to have on the sale of the asset. Does that make sense? Okay, so the whole reason for this little, once again, kind of subroutine is just to calculate what our tax liability is on the sale. Okay, so the first value that we're going to be populating here is the basis at acquisition. So take a look. That number is simply what? The purchase price. Okay? So, equal. Let's go up, grab that value. Okay? So B16. Okay? So cell B63 is just a cell reference to B16. Okay? You right with me? Yes? Okay. This next line, and this is going to become a little bit clearer here in a minute. So before Noah asks a question, just hold on to it. All right? What we're doing here is we're taking the depreciation that we have taken for income tax purposes on the operating cash flow of the property, adding it up for those 5 years, and popping it into that cell. Okay? And the reason we're doing this is as follows. I can get into a lot of excruciating detail on this, but simply put is this. If you sell a property for more than what you paid for it, you have a capital gain, yes? But you don't have just a capital gain. You also have a tax liability called recaptured depreciation. Because what has the IRS done? They have given you this tax benefit for each of the operating years of the real estate. In other words, year 1, you get to take a depreciation charge, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. In the minds of the IRS, that property should be worth less, not worth more. If it is worth less, you're not going to have any tax liability on the sale. You follow me? Because there's no gain. But if there is a gain, they're basically saying, you're going to pay taxes on that recaptured depreciation. Now, the interesting part of that is there's a different tax rate for recaptured depreciation. There's a different tax rate for ordinary income, and there's a different tax rate for capital gains. So you've got 3 different tax rates that apply to virtually every single real estate deal. Okay? Now, the highest of the 3 tax rates is always going to be the tax on the ordinary income. Okay? The year-to-year income the property generates. The next highest tax rate at 25% is the tax rate for recaptured depreciation. So if you're really thinking about this, to a certain extent, you're getting taxed on 28%, but you're really only going to have to pay back 25 of that 28% benefit that you got. So you get a little bit of a benefit, but not much. Okay? The real wonderful thing about real estate is the capital gain piece, because the tax rate for that is lower than both of those tax rates, and depending on, once again, kind of where you are, how long you held it, that sort of thing, but as a general rule, it's around 20%. Okay? So, simply put, if you're going to sell a property, you would prefer to have more capital gain income off of that property because it's going to be taxed at a lower rate than you would operating income. Does that make sense? Because it's taxed at a higher rate. Okay? All right. Anyway. Now, yep.
Capital gain. Do you pay more capital gain if you sell it within the first year versus holding it on for a longer?
You've got to own it for more than a year. Otherwise, it's a short-term capital gain, and that's a disaster. Because the short-term capital gain, in other words, held less than a year, you automatically get taxed as if it's ordinary income, which means it gets taxed at that higher rate. Well, and that higher rate may not just simply be the 28%. If you're a really wealthy individual or a wealthy corporation, that tax rate may be 30, 40%.
So if you're at 39.6, do you also get hit with the 3.4 or 3.2 for the
Alternative minimum tax thing, or are you talking about something else?
No, that's not the AMT. The 3.2 that goes towards the health care on top of the 39.6.
My suspicion is probably yes, because it is income. And it's being treated as I mean, once again, that'd be a good San Miguel question. But my suspicion is yes, because if it's being treated as ordinary income, because, and the reason I say that is because the IRS makes a distinction between investors in real estate and traders of real estate. Okay? Traders of real estate, their income, like, in other words, traders would be developers, quite frankly, would be, we buy something, we own it for a very short period of time, we sell it. Okay? Merchant developers. And that is your trade of business. You're like a home builder, you're a building builder, and you may only own the asset for a year or less, quite frankly. And so there, you would be taxed at that higher rate because it is ordinary income to you.
So if you purchase a parcel, develop the parcel, build it, when does the period start that they would essentially tax you on the property, from when you get the folio?
Technically, from the moment you purchase the property, but then there are adjustments that are going to be made once the construction is complete.
So I mean, the time period would start. You would like to
In
obviously.
essence, you're gonna have one question that you would have to answer is, when did you acquire the property? The other would be, when did you place it into service? Okay, all right, moving forward. All right, cost recovery, depreciation taken. As I said, this is simply going to be a summation of years 1 through 5 of the depreciation line. So you're gonna do equal, sum, SUM, open parentheses, and we're gonna go up to the line where we have annual depreciation. And you're gonna highlight all 5 years. So you're gonna have basically B30 colon F30, close the parentheses. Okay, so you should get negative 2716,283.12 if you did it correctly. Okay? Okay, once again, B30 colon F30. All right? All right, now, you're going to do the simple math, just like it's shown to you right here. This minus this gives you that. So equal 31 million. Basically add it to this because it's a negative number. So you should end up with 28,749,570.86. Now, let's, based on what I just talked about, the IRS sees the value of your property at the time of sale as if it were $28,749,000. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay? Because it's saying it has depreciated by 2.7 million. Does everybody follow that? Okay? Now you're going to say, well, how is it going to be taken? Well, we're getting there as to how it's going to be taken into account. Okay? So skip down a couple of lines. Okay, here, once again, you should just be able to pull from up above the sale price at the end of year 5. We had calculated using the cap rate. Oops, where's right there? B53. Okay, so once again, cell B67 is just simply cell referencing B53. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to subtract out the adjusted basis at the time of sale. Okay. So here's what's, let's make sure, once again, we're following the logic train here. Okay. We bought the property for the 31.4 million. Yes? It has depreciated for income tax purposes down to 28 million. Correct? But 5 years have passed, and now we're able to sell this property for 36 million. Yes? Okay, so what we have to do is subtract out this adjusted basis to get now our actual gain, capital gain, on the property. Okay, or the gain or the loss from the property, and then subtract out the cost recovery, and then get our overall capital gain. Okay? So, what we're going to do here, equal negative 65. Okay, once again, what's that? Once again, this cell reference is just simply equal negative B65. Okay? Okay. Now, we're going to do the math. Equal plus 68. So we should get 7614,332. There's our overall gain. but then we have to subtract out the depreciation that we've taken, so we simply cell reference that. And then we end up with the actual capital gain. Once again, the math is super simple. It's shown to you right over here. All you have to do is just follow the steps, okay? Just adding and subtracting. So you should end up with the 4898,049.52 as the capital gain from the appreciation. Okay, now.
Question,
Yep.
can you just go back to 69 for a second?
Because the reference so confusing.
Okay. We're almost there. Okay. The final steps of this part of the process is now we're going to just simply capture the sale price again. We can just do that from above since we've already got it up here, since it's local, if you will. All right. So in cell reference